950 million people are suffering from hunger worldwide, with a child dying from hunger every 10 seconds. To be sure, world hunger has many layers of complexity. One of the larger reasons is tied to poverty, but another significant factor is the looming shadow of our current demand to eat livestock and fish, which indirectly is tied to poverty. In fact, eating these animals ultimately affects food prices, food availability, and policymaking, which then suppresses progress in developing countries. Last year, there was considered another record harvest grain in the world with over 3 billion tons produced. But nearly half of that, just under half of that, was given to animals in the meat and dairy industries. Each year, 77% of all coarse grain produced in the world for food is consumed by livestock. That's maize, oats, sorghum, rye, millet, barley. So we can't blame climate change, droughts, or flooding for the world's food security issues. Although they will be modifying factors, clearly the difficulty is not how or if we can produce enough food to feed the hungry or the growing global population, but rather where all the food we currently produce globally is going. Not too long ago, I was asked to speak to microfinance leaders of many countries in the world at their annual conference in Istanbul. Among many other things, I explained the correlation between animal-based food production systems and world hunger can be found in generalized global factors, as well as on a local basis within countries where hunger and poverty rates are high. Global factors include manipulation and control of seed manufacturing and pricing, primarily for livestock feed crops by large companies such as Monsanto and DuPont, buying and selling of grain, including futures by ADM and Cargill, and through slaughterhouses and packaging by Cargill, Swift, Tyson, and JBS. These few but very large and powerful companies control over 65% of all seed and grain and over 80% of all final animal products in the world. It's a very monopolized production and economic system, manufacturing seeds at one end and spewing out meat at the other. But because of the global demand for meat, cultural, social, political, and economic influences remain strongly supportive of the continued dominance of these large companies and of the meat, dairy, and fishing industries in general. This then drives how global resources are used, how money is spent, and how policies are determined. The demand for animal products, whether factory farmed or not, in developed countries drives resource depletion in developing countries, as well as perpetuating poverty and hunger. That is the correlation. So it's time we stop all this by supporting with our dollars only organically grown plant-based foods and those smallholder farmers that produce them. Solving world hunger is not as simple as giving them the grain that would normally go to livestock. It's not that easy. The solution, particularly in developing countries that I've written about over the years, requires a multi-dimensional approach to sustainability, established on many levels simultaneously with organic plant-based systems, food systems at the nucleus. The model for success at reducing hunger in developing countries, I believe, should look like this: no livestock, no fish. This is the model where all world hunger funding should be spent if it's to be considered responsible financing. Well, we're losing other species on Earth at an unprecedented rate. Plants, animals, insects. The current view of most scientists is more related to the rate of extinction rather than the exact number, because they simply can't keep up with all the extinctions. That we're losing anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000 times the background rate, that which it's been for the previous 10 million years, which used to be around 2 to 4 species going extinct per year. Now, regardless of the metric, it's now a massive and embarrassing amount. So why all the extinctions, and what are we doing about it? Recognizing there's a serious problem, and as part of the Convention on Biological Diversity held in 2010, 200 nations adopted a 10-year plan to save other species by the year 2020. Well, these are just 4 of those 20 targets that were agreed upon. Unfortunately, none of their primary targets were met, none. And worse, loss of biodiversity is actually accelerating. And by the way, these are the recognized 5 drivers of biodiversity loss that you see on the lower right side of the screen. You see a possible common denominator. Well, Nearly all researchers agree today that climate change is not the first, and it's not even the second most significant driver of biodiversity loss. And they all agree that the leading cause of all 5 of these drivers combined is animal agriculture, livestock on land, and fishing in our oceans. So very similar to climate change, our leaders can set goals and targets all they want, but these goals and targets will never be reached without eliminating animals from our diet. For instance, it's pretty easy to meet their goal of reducing overfishing. Yeah, just stop eating fish. Done. Problem solved. I also know where they could get 40% more land to save. With failure of their targets set in 2010 at their meeting in Nagoya, and again in 2020 in Aichi, last year the Convention on Biological Diversity announced a new set of goals. Here we go. Once again, there's no direct mention of a plan to eliminate the major driver of biodiversity loss through all influencing factors, which again is the meat, dairy, and fishing industries. Their 21 targets will very predictably not be met. Once again, climate change plays the role of being an exacerbator, but not causing this. It's just going to worsen another category of global depletion. The Living Planet Index shows that we lost more than half of all vertebrate animal species in the world since 1970. Half are gone. It's no surprise that during that same 50-year period of time, global production of meat and dairy products quadrupled. Well, a landmark study was published in 2019, the most comprehensive ever regarding the state of our ecosystems. And among other things, they predicted that 1 million plant and animal species are predicted to be at risk of extinction just within the next few decades. 1 million. Essentially 30 to 50% of all living species on Earth will be extinct or heading toward extinction by the year 2050. Here's a view of more than 40,000 species that are on the verge of extinction today. With only a few hundred remaining on Earth, the mountain gorilla is number 3 on their list of most critically endangered for this year. Oh, what we're doing to other forms of life on Earth is unparalleled in the history of our planet, where one species is causing the mass extinction of nearly all other species. It reminds me of this somewhat well-known and very appropriate comment that if all insects on Earth disappeared, within 50 years, all life on Earth would end. However, if all human beings disappeared from Earth, within 50 years, all forms of life would flourish. Even Pope Francis weighed in on his concern that Earth is our home, the environment has rights, and that we humans are selfish in our disregard of Mother Earth. Now, whether you believe in God or not, or whether you believe in Pope Francis or not, he's absolutely right. Today, there's really no organization or business in the United States and most of the rest of the world that expects to be taken seriously, that does not have that word sustainable found somewhere in their corporate responsibility statement. So because of that, I mean, now it's up to us to guide everyone through that open door, to make that final proper connection to food choice. The choices we make together, particularly with things we consume, such as food, dictates supply and therefore directs the use of our resources. It's not the industrial meat producer or the dairy factory farmer that will take down that last standing rainforest on Earth. And it won't be the large commercial fishing trawler that's responsible for catching that last poor single fish remaining in the sea. No, it'll be the human consumer who's demanding it. In summary of today, in part 1 of these presentations, this is not a time for baby steps or for us to simply do less of something that's extremely destructive. It's also not the time to overfocus and blame all of our environmental woes on climate change. We need to begin thinking outside of self at our effect on others and on future generations of all species, and therefore to act now. The clock is ticking. If you haven't done so already, please consider adopting an organically grown, whole food, plant-based diet today, and don't stop there. Encourage others to do the same. We must all remember that it is our planet Earth that sustains and nourishes all of us. So it really won't matter how healthy we are if our planet isn't healthy. On this coming Tuesday, I'm going to talk about so many more important topics critical to our survival as a species and the effect we have on our planet and other living beings. We're going to talk about our oceans, how damaged they are, the real truth about sustainable seafood. We're going to talk about current trends like grass-fed movement and regenerative agriculture. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to look at the current view of policymakers. I'm going to provide you with new and unique insights, some hurdles we have to overcome, even some predictions. And of course, we're going to take a look at timelines and solutions. And as always, I'm going to offer a summary of optimism and of hope for the future. There's a lot to talk about, so I hope you'll join me next Tuesday. We're in a unique situation to help save Earth as we know it, save life on it now, and allow a livable future for those who inherit this planet from us. Or we could allow it to continue on its current path to very likely have life as we know it be destroyed. We have enough information in front of us to make the right decisions. And in doing so, we'll be seen as not just stewards, but as superheroes who stopped a runaway train with all of us on board and turned it in the direction of optimal sustainability, of rejuvenation, before we went over that cliff. I consider those of you who've joined us today viewing online as our enlightened leaders. You can make this happen. You can inspire others to make it happen. I'd like to think it'll be our defining ethos, our legacy, by which we will all be remembered. How nice would that be? So I encourage all of us here today, or watching this presentation as a replay, I encourage all of us to go out and inspire others to become aware. Thank you so very much for sharing this past hour and a half with me, a little more than an hour and a half. It's certainly a privilege for me to be here. Thank you so very much.